In today's video, we will visit the gravesides of Irish Civil War patriots, a 6th century church ruins, and hear a ghost story attached to this cemetery. Please join me for another graveside walk. In Kilbarrack Cemetery, Bayside, North Dublin, there is the ruins of a church that dates back to the 6th century. It is sometimes known as the Mariners' Church, as it was built to assist shipwrecked sailors. Ships that entered Dublin Bay paid duties for the maintenance of the church at one stage. There are many graves of note in this cemetery, one of whom is that of Thomas Wall from Drumcondra. He was a member of C Company, 2 Battalion, Dublin Brigade, 4 Courts Garrison. He was only 17 years old when he was killed by the pro-treaty side during the defence of the 4 Courts Records Office in Dublin during the Irish Civil War in 1922. Francis Flood, known as Frank, has a memorial here erected by his parents John Flood and Sarah Murphy. Frank was a first lieutenant in the Dublin Active Service Brigade during the Irish War of Independence. He was born in Dublin in 1901, one of 8 brothers and had 1 sister. On completion of secondary school, he won a scholarship to study engineering in University College Dublin. Frank was executed by the British authorities in Mountjoy Prison alongside 10 others. He was captured while attacking a lorry full of Dublin Metropolitan Police in Drumcondra, Dublin, in September 1921. He was discovered to have a grenade in his pocket, and all the men were in possession of arms. Frank Flood was charged by court-martial in February 1921 with high treason and levying a war against the king. He was one of 6 men hanged on the 14th of March 1921, aged just 19 years. He was the youngest of the 6. Flood would remain buried at Mountjoy Prison together with 9 other executed members of the Irish Republican Army, known as the Forgotten 10, until he was given a state funeral and reburied at Glasnevin Cemetery on the 14th of October 2001, after an intense campaign led by the National Graves Association. In Drumcondra, the bridge over the River Tolka at Millmount Avenue and Botanic Avenue was named Frank Flood Bridge on the 14th of March 2018. Daniel Head was born in Hollis Street Hospital, Dublin, in July 1903. The son of Michael, who worked as a carpenter, and Mary of Lower Charles Street. Daniel joined Na Fianna in 1915 and the Volunteer 2nd Battalion in 1919. He took part in decoy operations and street ambushes in which he used grenades. On May the 25th, 1921, Daniel carried some tins of paraffin into the Custom House in Dublin and began dousing the furniture and woodwork with the flammable liquid. He got separated from his comrade Richard McGrath and saw the arrival of the auxiliaries on Beresford Place. Despite a warning from his older comrade, Daniel's youthful courage kicked in and he ran near them, towards the railway pillars beside the Custom House. Acting on instinct, he ran out and threw a grenade at one tender, disabling the occupants and injuring 6. 4 were seriously wounded. This put 5 auxiliaries out of the battle. He was then hit 5 times by the accompanying armoured car's machine gun fire and died instantly. His diversion helped some of his colleagues escape the area, saving their lives. Also laid to rest here is Owen MacNeill. He was a key figure in the Gaelic revival and was co-founder of the Gaelic League to preserve Irish language and culture. He served as Ceann Comhairle in Dáil Éireann from 1921 to 22 and served as a Minister for Education from 22 to 25. He was also a member of the Northern Ireland Parliament from 21 to 25. James MacNeill is also laid to rest here. James was an Irish colonial administrator, politician and diplomat who served as first High Commissioner to London and second Governor-General of the Irish Free State. Also interred is his wife, Josephine, who was an Irish diplomat. She was appointed Minister to the Netherlands by Sean MacBride, making her the first female Irish diplomat to represent the Republic of Ireland abroad in a ministerial capacity. In the 1880s in Ireland, there was a weekly newspaper called Irish Society. Its focus was mainly society events, latest fashions and anonymous gossip. In 1892 they featured an eerie story on Kilbarrack Cemetery, an ancient seaside resting place. They described the person to whom this happened as being a gentleman of integrity as well as a well-known figure in the city. It reads, "I was on my way from Raheny to Howth. I had travelled from Malahide intending to catch the train at the Raheny station, but our train was some minutes late and the consequence was I missed the Howth train. Not relishing the idea of hanging about the railway station for 2 hours, I set off on my march to Howth, hoping I might catch the train at Sutton. And what a march it proved to be. I was imperfectly acquainted with the road, but I was confident that I would be able to strike the correct route, having got directions from the railway port. I turned to the left and passed the little crescent of cottages, soon leaving the cheery lights of the whitewashed public house in the rear, and having reached the main road, set off at a brisk walk, now plunging through lakelets of mud, kindly left for the unwary traveller. The road I had travelled was steeped in Cimmerian darkness, which the bright stars failed to relieve. Now I had the music of the waves, the twinkling and flashing beacons that guided mariners up the river, and the lights that marked the townships on the south side of the bay. Up to this time I had not met a single person, and the inhabitants seemed to have retired, although the hour was but a little past 9 o'clock. I mistook my bearings turning up a lane that had 6 inches of mud over its surface, and did not learn of my mistake until I knocked smartly with my cane on the door of a comfortable-looking house, half a mile up the road. Hesitation, one of the inhabitants, no doubt much wondering at the presence of a stranger in the vicinity, opened the door about 6 inches, and directed me to retrace my steps down the Meary Lane and reach the main road. In half an hour I was again on the road and soon reached the creepy vicinity of Kilbarrack Cemetery, with its numerous mounds and rude mementos of death, and its pointed ivy-clad ruins of a chapel which looked doubly eerie under the stars, shadowed by the darkly looming hill of Howth, steeped in an oppressive stillness, relieved only by the sea that has been so many a dead man's grave, and the occasional cry of the seabirds that seem never to sleep. I was suddenly confronted by an old man, dressed in quaint garb, and who had a rich luxuriance of lovely flaxen hair that matched a beard that reached below the breast. Taking him for the oldest inhabitant, I politely inquired my way and offered him something for the information. "Keep your money, wayfarer," the old man said. "Follow me." He led me towards the graveyard, telling me on the way that he had watched me for some time and guessed that I had lost my road. I soon noticed that his gait was not that of an ordinary mortal, that his dress was that of a long bygone age, that his headgear was rather soldier-like, and that there was a sort of transparency and glow about his flesh which I had never before seen on a human being. Yet, strange to say, I never suspected that he was other than an ordinary man. He led me over the fence and across the graveyard, I stumbling and plunging among the grassy mounds that covered the dust of past generations, he proceeding with an apparent ease and steadiness, a fact which I attributed to his better knowledge of the ground. He led me towards the ruined walls of his chapel, and I followed free from suspicion. Arrived here by some subtle influence caused me to enter, and I saw a sight that filled me with a strange feeling that was a mixture of awe and dread. Seated among the rank growth of nettles and weeds that covered the ground, perched in the embrasures that served as windows, and one even on the apex of the gable, were a company of men who in every respect resembled my ancient guide. On observing them closely, as they sat in the dim starlight, I noticed that they all wore what seemed to be coats of chain armour, and had the bearing of military veterans. I was greeted by them with cordiality, and bidden to sit down on a boulder, which I did. No sooner had I sat down than the earth seemed to open. The walls of the ruins vanished. I was forced into a vault-like opening and was carried down, it seemed for miles, surrounded by the band of shady warriors, until I was suddenly dazed by a strange radiance when I fell into an immense grotto illuminated with many links that hung on the walls. Seated on an upturned cask was one who wore a brazen crown, whose locks were whiter and longer than those of the numerous company that surrounded him, and who evidently was a person of high degree. This personage, in a loud voice, gave me a greeting, saying, "Welcome, stranger. By Thor, thou shalt partake of our cheer and drink defiance to the woes of the sea kings." I felt I was to be transformed into a new being. I drank of the stuff they offered me and found that it rather burned my mucous membrane, yet had no further effect. The being on the cask raised a sceptre, and those who reclined on the floor of the grotto or sat on the boulders of stone rose. "On with the dance," ordered the commander, and then began a wild war dance in which I was forced to join, becoming mysteriously armed with a battle axe and sword, which I swung in imitation of others in the strange company. The dance over, the chief addressed his followers, telling them that an adventurer, Sir Amory Tristram, was on his way to attack the peninsula of Ben Edar to drive out the Danes, and exhorting them to be strong in the fight. He then asked me to address the warriors. I mounted a rock to do so and began, "Danes and warriors, you have always been brave in battle and fearless in the face of death, when opposed to the greatest of chieftains, Brian Bormaha." "Brian Boromaha," yelled the company, "greatest of the chieftains. Thou art enemy to our cause." I was rash enough to make an uncomplimentary remark to the chief of the soldiers, whereupon I was forced up the shaft through which I had descended, hurried by the Danish spectres, for such I am convinced they were, and on reaching the ruins of the chapel I was subjected to rough handling, and footing too, and was sinking into unconsciousness when the chief of soldiers blew a long weird blast on a whistle and the company disappeared. I awoke to find a coast guardsman bending over me, and on telling him of my wish to reach the railway, he helped me to my feet, and stiffened and sore, led by his direction, I reached the station in time for the train. I trembled in every fibre when the engine emitted a demoniacal whistle that vividly reminded me of the closing episode of my weird adventure. Some of my friends suggest that I slept, others insinuate that I was the victim of material spirits, but I hold that I was thoroughly compos mentis and intend to consult the psychological savants. If ever you find yourself walking past Kilbarrack Cemetery, lost on a dim and misty night, avoid any strange apparitions that might try and lure you into the ruins. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a comment and subscribe, and I'll see you for the next one.